The Unbreakable Will. Chapter 1, Dust and Despair. The groan echoed through the tunnel, a low rumble that vibrated through Maya's boots. It wasn't the usual tremor, the kind caused by their mining drills gnawing into the asteroid's brittle crust. This was different, deeper, a primal growl that sent shivers down her spine. She glanced at Rajiv, his dark eyes wide with the same dread she felt. They'd been clearing debris after the morning shift, the dull clang of their tools, a familiar rhythm in the artificial light of the tunnel. Now the silence was deafening. "What was that?" Rajiv's voice was barely a whisper. Maya didn't reply. Her pulse hammered in her ears, drowning everything else out. She gripped the handle of her mining laser tighter, the worn metal cool against her clammy palm. Another tremor, stronger this time. Dust rained down from the cracked ceiling, coating her helmet visor in a gritty film. Rajiv coughed, his flashlight momentarily flickering in the gloom. Then a deafening roar swallowed them whole. The ground lurched, throwing Maya sideways. Her scream was lost in the cacophony of crashing rock, in the shriek of tortured metal. Darkness slammed into her as the tunnel lights sputtered and died. Disoriented, Maya clawed at the debris, pinning her down. The air was thick with dust, making it difficult to breathe. Panic clawed at her throat, but years spent working in the unforgiving mines had instilled a steely resolve in her. Taking a deep, ragged breath, she forced herself to focus. "Rajiv," she called out, her voice hoarse in the crushing silence. A muffled groan answered her. Relief flooded through her, warm and sudden. "I'm here, Maya," Rajiv rasped, stuck under a rock. Scrambling, Maya used her free arm to sweep away the loose dust and rubble. Finally, she located Rajiv's helmet, the light flickering weakly. "Can you move your legs?" she asked, her voice tight. "Think so," Rajiv grunted. "Just a big hunk of rock on my leg." With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Maya began pulling and shoving at the rock. It was heavy, immovable, a mocking testament to the raw power of the meteor strike. Frustration bubbled up inside her, but she pushed it down. Giving up wasn't an option. Not yet. "We need to get out of here," she said, her voice firm. "There might be another cave-in." Rajiv swore under his breath. "Can you reach your comm?" Maya fumbled for the small device on her shoulder harness. It felt strangely warm, a disconcerting detail she didn't have time to dwell on. "Dead," she muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. No signal. A beat of silence followed. Then Rajiv spoke, his voice laced with a grim humor that mirrored her own. "Well, Maya Singh," he said, "looks like we're in a real heap of trouble." Chapter 2, Trapped Together. The air in the collapsed tunnel grew thick and stale. The faint green glow from Rajiv's flickering flashlight offered scant comfort. Time stretched on, measured only by the rhythmic drip of water somewhere above them. "Think anyone knows we're missing?" Rajiv's voice broke the silence, tinged with a hint of desperation. Maya looked at him, his face pale in the green light. "Shift change should have been an hour ago. They'll come looking." She forced a confidence she didn't entirely feel. They'd been partners for 3 rotations on this desolate asteroid, Sing Station 12. 3 years of cramped quarters, shared meals, and the ever-present hum of drill bits gnawing into the rock. They knew each other's habits, anxieties, and the silent language of gestures exchanged in the dimness of the tunnels. Rajiv coughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the confined space. "Maybe not. The comm system's been acting wonky all week. What if they didn't get the warning about the tremors?" A knot of dread formed in Maya's stomach. The comm system was their lifeline to the surface, to the main habitat dome where the rest of the crew lived. Without it, she pushed the thought away. "We have emergency rations. They'll last a few days." It wasn't much, but it was all they had. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound their ragged breaths. Finally, Maya spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. "Remember that time your grav chute malfunctioned on Alpha 7? Rajiv chuckled, a dry rasp that sent a shiver down her spine. "How could I forget? Stuck upside down, dangling like a space piñata for 2 hours. And who rigged a makeshift winch using spare cables and your trusty wrench to pull you up?" Maya couldn't help but smile faintly, the shared memory a welcome distraction from their current predicament. Rajiv grinned, his face creased with lines etched by years spent under the harsh glare of asteroid lights. "Yeah, you never thought a mining engineer could MacGyver her way out of anything." A wry smile touched Maya's lips. Just a little ingenuity, Sing style, she said, the familiar nickname warming her even in the cold tunnel. They lapsed into silence again, the weight of their situation settling in. The faint light from Rajiv's helmet seemed to be dimming, a constant reminder of their dwindling resources. The silence was shattered by a sudden thud, followed by a cascade of dust. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. Another tremor? She grabbed Rajiv's arm. "Did you hear that?" He nodded grimly. "Sounds like something shifted above us." Fear gnawed at Maya's gut. The tunnel wasn't stable. They couldn't stay here. But where else could they go? The rest of the mine workings could be equally dangerous, perhaps even more so. Taking a deep breath, Maya forced herself to be practical. "We need to find a way out of here," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Maybe there's a pocket we can crawl into, somewhere with more air." Rajiv nodded in agreement. A flicker of defiance sparked in his eyes. They were trapped, yes, but they weren't giving up yet. Not as long as they had each other, and a flicker of hope. Chapter 3, Clawing for Survival. The air thickened with dust, clinging to Maya's lungs with each shallow breath. Her headlamp cast a weak beam, revealing more debris that had fallen from the ceiling, blocking their previous path. Despair threatened to overwhelm her, but she pushed it down. Panic wouldn't help. They needed a plan. "There!" Rajiv rasped, pointing towards a narrow opening in the wall partially obscured by fallen rocks. "Maybe that leads somewhere." It was a tight squeeze, barely wide enough for their shoulders. Maya felt claustrophobia gnaw at the edges of her mind, a familiar enemy in the confined spaces of the asteroid mines. Rajiv went first, disappearing into the darkness. Maya followed, her heart pounding against her ribs. The rough rock scraped against her suit, the silence broken only by the rasp of her breath and the occasional clink of dislodged pebbles. The tunnel twisted and turned, becoming increasingly narrower. Panic clawed at Maya's throat, but she pressed on, fueled by a desperate hope. Finally, the passage opened into a small cavern, a dim, dusty space littered with equipment and discarded mining tools. Relief washed over Maya, so intense it almost made her knees buckle. "Air quality seems okay," Rajiv said, his voice muffled by his helmet. He gestured towards a metallic box strapped to the wall. "Emergency kit, maybe some rations in there." Hope kindled anew. Maya scrambled towards the box, popping open the latches with trembling fingers. Inside, she found a few energy bars, a pouch of water purification tablets, and a first aid kit. The meager supplies did little to alleviate the grim reality of their situation, but they were a lifeline. Maya handed the energy bar to Rajiv, his face pale under the dim light. "Let's see what else this little haven has to offer," she said, her voice gaining a hint of its usual determination. They explored the cavern, their headlamps revealing a jumble of discarded mining equipment. In a corner, Maya spotted a dusty toolkit, its metallic components gleaming faintly. An idea sparked in her mind. "Rajiv," she said, her voice filled with a newfound urgency, "hand me your helmet." He looked at her questioningly, but complied. Maya examined the comm unit attached, a frown creasing her brow. "The power cell is fried," she muttered, frustration creeping into her voice. "But the wiring looks intact." Hope battled with despair. They couldn't contact the surface with a dead power cell, but maybe there was another way. Chapter 4, A Glimmer of Hope. Days bled into one another, measured only by the rhythmic drip of water somewhere above them and the gnawing emptiness in their bellies. Hunger gnawed at them, a constant reminder of their dwindling rations. The recycled water tasted metallic and stale, adding to the growing sense of desperation. Maya felt trapped, not just by the collapsed tunnel, but by the crushing weight of silence. The claustrophobia, an unwelcome companion in the cramped confines, gnawed at the edges of her mind. Gone was Rajiv's usual sardonic humor, replaced by a quiet despair that mirrored her own. One morning, Maya awoke with a jolt. A strange, rhythmic pulsation vibrated through the rock, a low, steady thrum that sent shivers down her spine. It wasn't the usual tremor, a sudden and jarring movement. This was different, almost engineered. Her heart hammered in her chest. Could it be a rescue team? A flicker of hope, fragile as a butterfly's wing, fluttered to life in her gut. "Did you hear that?" she whispered to Rajiv, her voice hoarse from disuse. He stirred, his eyes blinking open slowly. "Sounds like machinery?" The hum grew louder, a deep, pulsating beat that seemed to resonate in their bones. Maya felt a surge of adrenaline course through her. Hope, once a flickering ember, now burned brighter. Were they finally being located? "We need to get a signal out," she said, her voice gaining strength despite the dryness in her throat. "There's gotta be a way to boost the comm unit." She grabbed the dusty toolkit from the corner, her mind racing. Years of grueling engineering school flashed before her eyes, dormant knowledge yearning to be used. "The drilling laser," she muttered, a plan forming in her head. "It has a high-powered capacitor. Maybe." The idea was risky, a desperate gamble at best, but it was their only chance. With trembling hands, Maya began dismantling the laser, her movements precise despite the dull ache in her muscles. Every click of a wrench, every twist of a screw echoed in the cavern. Rajiv, his eyes gleaming with a newfound spark of hope, assisted her. He passed her tools, his silence a testament to the weight of the situation in their last-ditch attempt. Sweat beaded on Maya's forehead as she stripped the laser down to its core components. Finally, she held the heavy capacitor in her gloved hands, its surface warm to the touch. "This is it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Carefully, she bypassed the comm unit's power cell and jury-rigged a connection to the laser capacitor. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she flipped the switch. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then a faint crackle filled the air, followed by a hiss of static. The red light on the comm unit flickered to life. Tears pricked Maya's eyes. It wasn't much, but it was a sign, a fragile thread connecting them to the outside world. Taking a deep breath, Maya keyed the microphone. Her voice, raw with emotion, filled the small cavern. "Sing Station 12, miners trapped in collapsed tunnel, requesting immediate assistance. Over." Silence. An eternity stretched on, punctuated only by their ragged breaths. Then a faint crackle, followed by a voice that sent a surge of relief through Maya. "Sing Station 12, this is Control. We hear you. Rescue team on the way. Hold tight." A wave of exhaustion washed over Maya. Relief threatened to pull her under, but she forced herself to stay awake. They weren't out of the woods yet, but for the first time in days, hope felt real, tangible. Chapter 5, A New Fight. The rhythmic thrumming grew louder, a relentless pulse that vibrated through Maya's aching bones. A sliver of hope, long dormant, flickered to life in her chest. Rescue. It was a word she'd almost forgotten the meaning of. Rajiv stirred beside her, his breathing shallow. The cavern, once a refuge, now felt like a tomb, the stale air heavy with the weight of their ordeal. A faint glow appeared in the distance, a beacon cutting through the oppressive darkness. Relief washed over Maya, so intense it almost made her dizzy, but a nagging worry remained. The pounding intensified, punctuated by the screech of metal on rock. Then a section of the collapsed tunnel wall exploded inwards, showering them with dust and debris. Maya coughed, her vision obscured by the swirling cloud. Two figures emerged from the haze, clad in bulky rescue suits that gleamed under the harsh beam of their headlamps. They moved with practiced efficiency, wielding powerful cutting lasers that sliced through the remaining rock with a satisfying hiss. The dust settled, revealing a narrow opening bathed in the gentle glow of sunlight. Fresh air, a forgotten luxury, flooded the cavern, a wave of cool relief against their sweat-slick skin. Maya took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the life-giving oxygen. It tasted like freedom. A woman, her face framed by short brown hair, approached them. Her helmet visor flickered as she looked at them, her expression etched with concern. "You two all right?" she asked, her voice calm and professional. Maya tried to speak, but her throat was raw. Days of thirst and dust had left it a burning wasteland. Rajiv, however, rasped, "We're alive." The woman nodded, a hint of a smile softening her features. "That's all that matters right now." Another figure emerged from the debris, a wiry man with a shaved head and a worn tool belt strapped to his hip. He knelt before them, his blue eyes filled with a quiet intensity. "Medical team is on its way," he said, his voice gentle. "We'll get you checked out." He offered them a canteen of water, a simple gesture that held the weight of salvation. Maya took a long drink, the cool liquid quenching her parched throat. It was the sweetest thing she'd ever tasted. As the medical team arrived, their movements crisp and efficient, Maya couldn't help but steal a glance at the tunnel entrance. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating the path to the surface, a world she'd almost forgotten. The surface, freedom. It felt like a distant memory, a life from another time. The rescuers gently loaded them onto stretchers, carrying them out into the blinding sunlight. Maya squinted, her eyes adjusting to the unfamiliar brightness. She looked up at the vast expanse of the sky, a canvas splashed with familiar constellations. They were alive. They were going home. But as the hovercraft lifted them away from the desolate asteroid, a new concern gnawed at her. The comm flickered to life on her wrist, a message flashing on the screen. Fuel leak detected. Critical systems failing. Fear, cold and sharp, twisted in Maya's gut. They were rescued, yes, but a new challenge awaited them. A challenge that would require all their ingenuity, all their human spirit to overcome. A wry smile touched Maya's lips. They were miners, after all. They faced danger head-on, and this, she realized, was just another fight.